Hello, everyone. This is Jordan Pedraza, Head Community Manager for Google Apps for Education. Thank you bunch for tuning in today to hear our next installment of our CIO Fireside Chat series. We're starting now with Jerry Sanders, CIO of Macalester College, and he'll be talking about Google Apps from a liberal arts college perspective. This webinar is being recorded, so if any of your colleagues missed out, we'll be archiving this on YouTube. If you have any questions during the presentation or after during Q&A discussion, feel free to submit them in the Q&A window in the bottom right-hand corner. With that, I'll hand it over to Jerry and Macalester.
Everyone, I hope you can hear me. Thanks for attending our fireside chat. Although we won't actually be starting our fire, it's above 0 in Minnesota, so we don't really need fires. Gordon? So Macalester is a, you'll hit the next slide, Jordan, located in St. Paul, small liberal arts college, around 2,000 students, 230 faculty, as you see. Beyond, attend Macalester, and the first Prairie Home Companion shows were done from Macalester. Just a couple of the main tidbits about our school. I'll leave you with this. You know, as an IT manager, I benefit from hearing about failures as much as successes, and I'm attending professional conferences as I'm trying to learn as much as possible and learn from pitfalls. But I say what you'll be hearing from us today doesn't contain much of that. We're not Google salespeople, if such a thing exists, but we've had a really, really positive experience with Google over the last 4 years. So we're going to talk a little bit about the history, getting involved in Google, and how we responded to it, and some of our examples and reflections on that experience. I should note, too, that I'm joined here by Baron Korleski, who is our Director for Academic Computing and Client Services, and Adam Nave, who is our Systems Administrator, as well as kind of our official Google Scout. So, our challenge. When I came to Macalester in 2006, our president to me was, look, you must make email work. Macalester had problems for a couple of years with our product, which was the Oracle Collaboration Suite. Probably a very good product, but for various reasons it wasn't working out with us. And our community was ready for a change. That's really important, as you can imagine. It helped the transition a great deal. Our response to that challenge was to begin a 6-month evaluation and selection process for an email product for the whole community, students, faculty, and staff. We created a client-led community, which also was very important. We had a representation. We had a lot of involvement with the community. Community helped us with testing, with the discussions, with the evaluation, with the recommendation. We looked at all the leading products at that time, and this was 4 years ago. So we were in a Novell environment. We owned GroupWise. That would have been easy. We looked at Zimbra. We looked at VeraPoint, MS Live, and we looked at Google. And we looked at all of them very thoroughly, and our recommendation was Google. We did have a concern at that point. Our provost then was a philosopher whose area was digital rights, privacy, and security. So we thought that we might have a lively discussion when we presented this recommendation to the senior staff. And indeed, our provost did start to address concerns that she had of privacy in regard to Google, and our president said at one point that there is no privacy. We all bit our tongues and hoped that we could move on with the recommendation, and we could. There's a major issue which we skirted kind of expeditiously. Perhaps we should have spent more time on it, but it worked out very, very for us. So we moved into our contract negotiations with Google. That was an interesting period of time. All of us that are acquainted with software negotiations had a mindset about how that's done, and the kind of foundation here was that Google was free, so when discussing this with our attorneys, we had to remind them of that when our attorneys suggested that we get tough with Google. And those negotiations were, I would say, we did discuss several points with Google, and we signed the contract, and it was a very, very pleasant experience once we got into Google's kind of sensibility about this particular contract. Once we made the selection, we planned a 6-month rollout, which was rudely interrupted by a kind of freak lightning strike on a transformer here in St. Paul that fried one of our email servers and caused our OCS system to struggle mightily, and we decided that we would bite the bullet and just make the jump and transition as soon as we possibly could. So we transitioned the campus in about 3 weeks, a very intense time that I think probably blocked from most of our memories, so I'm going to jump into the results of that. The results were very good, very high level of satisfaction from the campus. And remember that I said that I thought it was very important that we involve the community in the process, in the decision. That helped us a lot. It helped us a lot that they were very ready for a change. It was, given that it was so rushed, a very, very good experience. Our president said to his council that he had never seen our school come together around solving a problem as well as we solved this implementation problem. That year, our students in their top 3 are transitioned to Google as one of those top 3. And there's a lot of things that happen at this campus every day. It seems like they're pretty interesting, and so we weren't shooting to win any awards, but we were very pleased. Some of the effects of implementing Google in our environment are certainly that our tools have changed, broadened, as well as the essentials in the applications suite. We have marketplace apps. The idea of this expanded tool set with Google, as well as from Apple, and the effects of iPad and mobile devices, and in our environment have really expanded our and how we do our work. Google have opened the door to us to get to thinking in ways that we were intimidated by cloud computing and software as a service, and really starting to look forward to applying some of those same principles to negotiations with other software vendors. For example, when we were in implementations for upgrades and RP, that standard model where we would plan for several months ahead of time, put a bunch of man hours and money and other resources into an upgrade process that would leave us with hopefully some something better than we had, downtime and so forth. All of that was gone. All of that was changed, and it gave us the ability to say to our ERP vendor, in this case SunGard, that why can't you do that? How come we can't do business that way? Can start thinking about that. That's very powerful. Not that we changed how SunGard does business with us, but we're thinking about a lot of things that we didn't used to think about. We're thinking about more in regard to open source, quality, those kinds of options. I don't know where we will end up there, but my point is that working with Google kind of prepared the way for expanding our options and our thinking about this. Interesting in the role that we all in the ITS organization changed doing our work. One of our help desk staff said that given the number of options that we have in this new environment, including Google, including Apple apps and our other options, the analyst job, the help desk staff feels like, quote, we're in the jungle looking for the river, not knowing where it is, but knowing how to go about finding it. Experience in IT and higher education, I remember earlier days with in academic technologies in particular, when we did feel like analysts, when we were looking at creative ways to approach problems and academic challenges, and then for a period of time we became more keen problem solvers. We had a set of standard supported hardware and software. We became expert at supporting them, and that's what we did. It's different now. We have the opportunities to think about doing research, doing our analysis, looking out there in the world, in the Google marketplace and the Apple marketplace, and assemble a set of tools that are more narrowly focused and better focused. And that's takes some time to get used to, but over time that becomes how we think, and it's more productive, it's more creative. I believe it's a better work environment for our staff, so it's a kind of a professional development opportunity as well. It's just better. We, for example, we're creating a lot of documentation, assembling documentation. We look to the web first, and then we supplement what is not available on the Google site, Apple sites, rather than the other way around, relying just on links that are contained in our documentation. So it saves us a lot of time, and the on those sites is very, very, very good. Same thing is true with training. There's a lot available on YouTube. There's a lot of resources out there that really make our jobs easier, thereby letting us focus on the contact with the user and their particular application, and it's very much better for our user community. First section of my little talk, I'm going to connect up after variants about some particular examples of how we're using Google and academic technology, and then I'd like to spend a little time with more general reflections about the change that Google and software as a service and cloud have brought, and segue into a discussion with you guys after that. So, Baron, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jerry. I wanted to talk a little about a few examples on how to use Google Apps at Macalester. Use it across the campus, faculty, staff, and students for all kinds of things, but today I'm going to give you 4 examples of the way we use it in the classroom. And we can talk in the discussion about other ways that you use it or we use it at Macalester. I'm going to focus my remarks in two areas, collaboration and innovation. First, collaboration. Macalester, one of its foundational pillars is an mission of internationalism. So one way that we in IT can contribute to the internationalism is helping in outside speakers into our classrooms, outside experts, linking other classes across the globe. Of course, very expensive to bring people in, and money was no object. The people that we want to bring in, very, very busy people. They couldn't devote several days traveling to the middle of Minnesota from wherever they're at. So what we've done is use inexpensive web-based video conferencing like Google Chat, and hopefully soon Google Hangouts, to bring in outside experts. And that might take the form of alumni. We've had past Macalester students talk to current Macalester students about what it's like making the transition, finding a job, going on to grad school. People in the national political campaigns or White House staff talk to political science classes here at Macalester, saying what it's like in the real world actually working in government as opposed to studying it here at Mac and what they've learned from that process. The picture now is an example of a classics class who simultaneously to meeting here in Minnesota is linked up on the screen through chat with a class in Israel discussing the globe issues between the two classes. I think the most exciting examples that we've had from the past year of doing this is linking up our classes with people involved in organizing and protesting during the Arab Spring events in the Middle East over the past year. It's incredible for Macalester students to connect with something that's changing the Middle East and changing the world in real time with people that were planning the next day's events. They would hear them from these organizers, and then they would read about them in the news the next day. It was just an incredible way to do this, and that we couldn't have done without free and easy. We couldn't fly these people back and forth every day to talk to our classes. It was a unique experience that I think will stick with them. And in that way, we've made our classroom walls permeable, and a lot more information is coming into them from across the world. On the net, you can see another example of collaboration. That's our Ordwaypedia page. The college has a natural resource center called the Ordway Natural Resource Center, but it's not well known on campus. It's off campus. It's on the banks of the Mississippi River. It's really a beautiful place, but not many people on campus know much about it. So the Environmental Studies Senior Seminar had a goal to raise awareness and share information about the Ordway Center. So I decided to create a web presence. But as you probably all know, our students aren't expert web programmers. They probably don't know any HTML, and web programming has advanced so much that they, for the most part, aren't keeping up with it. They came to us with several challenges. The first is some way to create websites in an easy manner. The second is they wanted the entire class to collaborate simultaneously on creating this website. And moreover, they wanted to be able to hand that website off to future classes. In perpetuity, the senior seminar hopefully will come back to this and update it. So this is quite a challenge to create it for them to do that. And even more than that, they wanted all of Macalester to have the ability to collect and contribute, essentially crowdsource information gathering to the Macalester community. And it's the Ordway Wikipedia catchy name that they came up with. So what we recommended for that is Google Sites. So if you go to this page, and it's easy to find if you just search for it, you see they've put up a ton of information about the Natural Resource Center, and they've laid the foundation for future work on this. What they have to do in the future is, with guests going to the Ordway Center, having smartphones, being linked to this and learn about what they're seeing, see what plants and animals, look at trails, find where they're at, and hopefully, given every smartphone has a camera and a GPS built in, that they could contribute information back to the site. Pictures of animals or plants, links to where they saw them based on the GPS in the phone. It's a vicious project, and I think that as Google Sites grows and as future classes work on that, it'll be very interesting how to watch it develop. Two examples I wanted to talk about are related to innovation. Chaz of our math department, has done what we call flipping the classroom. He sees it as a problem. The very precious finite resource of in-class time is used measuring at the students. So what he's done is he pencasts his lectures. He uses a smart pen to record the notes and audio, math derivations and lectures, shares those with the students. Just read these, listen to these before class, and via Google Moderator submit questions and vote up the questions that they share. I've even seen some of these where students will answer each other's questions before the class using the comments in Google Moderator. Chat in the class can percolate up the most important questions, the ones that the students are all struggling with, and start there when they do have this precious in-class time, answer those questions, and then devote more in-class time, active problem-solving discussions, and really working exercises as opposed to being just lectured at. That's really exciting use of Google Moderator here. The next one I want to mention is Kristen Zoni in our art history department came with a challenge. She wanted her students to visualize long destroyed Roman buildings and experience what they were like. However, these were destroyed during the Napoleonic era, and descriptions of those, written descriptions, so there's no way to experience them. What her vision was is for the students to get a program, learn that, and design these buildings, render them, but then experience them. We know that CAD programs are very expensive and the learning curves are incredibly steep, but we know a little bit about SketchUp. So we suggested SketchUp and we ran with it. We didn't know much about it, so we were learning it maybe a few hours to a few days ahead of the students. You can see some examples of what they've done though. Based on descriptions, they create those buildings. They were able to then fly through them and experience what they would have been like at scale back before they were destroyed. So excited about this that in her next class, she also used SketchUp. The students were able to create a gallery and exhibit of all the artwork, pieces of art that they were studying in their class, and then create it as an exhibit. So it was a very successful use of Google SketchUp based on an innovative vision of one of our faculty. So I'll hand this back to Jerry, but I look forward to talking to you in the discussion about more of the examples that you have.
Thanks, Aaron. So I just want to talk a little bit more generally about some of our reflections about who we've become over the last 4 years and how the changes in technology have who we are and how we think. I would characterize this as overall as a period of more confidence as IT people, but less certainty. We have a lot of confidence in Google and some of the companies that we've worked with, but we're in a position where we feel a degree of certainty like we used to have, that our data was 99% protected in our data center, and we knew where it was. We can go down the hall and unlock it and look at it. We make that switch to data being stored wherever. But the fact is that we have confidence that our data is better protected now than it ever was before, even though physically we knew it was and we had access to it. That's some getting used to, but we feel better about things. As we, in particular in working with Google, as I mentioned before, that kind of opened the door for us to be thinking about some of the other modern resources that are available, cloud and software, platform as a service. We're better professionals at thinking about how those things work and what the implications might be. That's been a great for us. In terms of our roles, which is IT roles, that is, which is concern us all, there are questions about what happens in the future. If we're using primarily hosted services, what will our role be? Will we have a role? where does it change? Does it become more of a hybrid role where we're kind of faculty and kind of technicians, and should we train ourselves in that direction, which we kind of do here at Macalester. Faculty roles, what will their role be? And for that, or what will the role of higher education be? There's a lot of things that are under consideration. You all are probably familiar with Brad Wheeler and Brian Voss's EDUCAUSE presentation about the CO as a plumber or a strategist. I think that we say are always both, but there's an emphasis on one or the other at different times. So I feel like we've been probably been on plumbing, but the last couple of years I think that the mood is changing as where we have to step forward, we have to be strategists. The tools that are available, the changes are just too big, tools are too powerful. We're in a cycle now where IT has to step forward into that leadership cycle. We don't give up the plumbing role, but we underscore the leadership. I think time of great uncertainty. Will the internet, iPad, big data, the affordability of all this stuff, the power of information, but it's an exciting time too. It's what we had hoped for in terms of the power of technology to contribute to higher education. And I think at a time in our country when it's exists as a challenge. The State of the Union last night underscored technology and education. I think we can make contributions. There are risks in this new environment, no doubt, but the rewards, I think, are great. And then there's some things that are really just, I think, fascinating, like Siri in the new Apple phone, and implementation of artificial intelligence in a way that creates a information age mentor for our students, something that's been, we've been talking about for a long, long time. I remember Alan Kay from Apple doing videos about that kind of thing many years ago. I think there's some cautions. Our jobs do require us in the midst of all of these options to be calm and patient and knowing when to wait and when to act, to be brilliant. But we do have to take chances, and we certainly are at this point. Jacob Appelbaum, one of the Google employee, or was a Google employee, I assume still is, was interviewed in Rolling Stone last year, and he was talking about his role in the WikiLeaks investigation and his efforts to stay off the grid. It's fun to read, interesting article. It struck me, one of the things he said at the end of the article, he said, "I love Google," he says, "and I love the people there. Sergey Brin and Larry Page are cool, but I'm terrified of the next generation that takes over. A benevolent dictatorship is still a dictatorship. At some point, people are going to realize that Google has everything on everyone. Most of all, they can see what questions you're asking in real time. Quite literally, they can read your mind." That's something as human beings that we all are concerned with. It feels to me, however, though, that you're either on the grid or off the grid. And if you're on the grid and you take advantage of all the benefits of the grid, I think the information about you is very, very difficult to protect. We do what we can to protect, but we live in we're taking a risk by being on the grid, and I think it's just something that we have to manage to the best of our ability. Of course, don't know what the future is going to look like, but I'm going to leave you with a couple of points that I think are very helpful in dealing with it. if you know the Computing Above the Campus article and the Brad Wheeler and Shelton Wagner have been doing to help us all pooling our resources to get some of these things done. You know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, I'd certainly recommend them to you. And in particular, they're looking at 4 things that we ought to be doing as the path forward, as they say in their article. And one is to achieve federated identity. Another is to establish a consortium maker, a means of collaboration, staff development, professional development, sharing, pooling our resources to bring our stuff up, and policy evolution, some kind of central means to manage all of these new complexities in the cloud and software as a service contracts that are coming out. I think they're really doing nice work, and I think it's a great place to look for some assistance. And finally, the ability to develop the ability to collaborate whenever we can, wherever we can. At a national level, certainly EDUCAUSE helps us with that. We find in Minnesota a lot of benefits by working regionally. We have a statewide collaboration that is the private schools and the University of Minnesota and Minnesota State that creates a large resource that helps us in many ways, like purchasing leverage and so forth. But I'm really looking forward to it continuing to develop to the development of our staff resources and the ability to share and not have to reinvent at each of our campuses. The obvious benefit of doing this regionally is we can go and visit one another. We don't have to rely on technology, and as evidenced by this Google Fireside chat with all of this technology supporting this, we clearly find benefit in being engaged one-to-one, one-to-many as human beings. So we'll continue that, and it would be my suggestion to anybody involved in our profession to collaborate as much as possible. And certainly it was a theme of last year's EDUCAUSE, and it seems to be something that most of us are doing. So anyway, that's our and now I'd like to hear you.
Thanks so much, Jerry and Baron, for your reflections there. That's really fascinating to hear more about what's going on the ground at MAC, about apps and other technologies that you all are using. So yeah, let's open it up to everyone. I'm going to actually allow anyone that's dialed in on the conference to ask questions, and then also just feel free to submit questions in the Q&A window if you prefer. First question I see here, how do you say Google Apps has impacted the way everyone works together at Macalester? And what would you say to other liberal arts colleges that have either already deployed Google Apps or are thinking about deploying Google Apps?
Google Apps, since it is built on collaboration, has changed the way a lot of business processes work, and a lot of documents now in a way that had been very awkward at best. We used to have to email things around. Documents would quickly and infinitely many variations that somebody would have to coalesce. I think using Google Docs to better and more quickly collaborate has been really powerful. Even though we're a small liberal arts, our students, since they are so many activities and so many organizations, and they're active on and off campus, to actually find time for their groups to meet. And on that, it seems that more and more professors are assigning group work in classes. So I think tools like the Google Apps Suite have allowed for a very flexible collaboration options for students, where one of them might be working at 6 in the morning and one may be working at 3 in the morning, and everywhere in between, to be able to do good group work, to be able to do collaborative writing or projects for their classes.
And I would add too that just like the IT stuff adapted and evolved in how they offer services and support, it's the case for our user community as well. At first, when we made the transition, they would be calling us just like they called us for any other problems over the years, and we would say, well, gee, I don't know, let's get a Google site, or let's do this and see if we can research and find that answer together. Over time, they became empowered, and they do that themselves. So we feel like our community now has just a higher level of technology skills, and that's our goal, as much as we possibly can. So after going through that first 6 or a year of changing our model, our support model, getting people used to it, and problems a couple of times, it became that we have just a community of users that are more empowered, more technologically literate, more independent, and can go out and do this stuff on their own.
Next question. What was your biggest surprise after you deployed Google Apps?
We're all looking at one another. Well, number one, I have to say that after that 3-week rushed deployment, we exhausted. We were kind of dead for a little while. Maybe that was a good thing for us. Once we were through that deployment, everything else was minor. I mean, there were the little surprises in how it functioned, but big surprise, I can't really think of any. Can you guys?
Surprise is the one that Jerry alluded to, is how much it caused us to grow, to support a software service in the cloud, to realize that we couldn't control the way it looked, and that sometimes we were seeing changes in Google at the same time a user would see them, or we'd call about something that worked yesterday, and they're finding that it works different today, and we haven't seen it yet. And I think that that's a little scary, but it's also a lot more exciting, and it makes our jobs much more interesting and challenging in a good way.
That point, Baron. Yeah, we did have to get used to that. We knew it was going to work that way, but to actually come into the office and have a new set of services that we didn't anticipate, now we are much better at that. We've learned about new roles. For example, I mentioned that Adam was our Google Scout. Adam has a pretty good sense and can keep us advised about what Google is doing and generally what the directions are that they're heading. And we need to think that way strategically about all areas that we work in these days. So once we got used to that, yeah, it was great, but it was a little bit unsettling to actually confront it and have to say, sorry, I have no idea what you're talking about. At work.
I'd point out that we joined Google. There was no rapid or standard release track. There was just pretty much everything at once. So that your idea of having things change on you overnight is a little scary. There are more options where you get a little more advanced notice. This old release track, it's been interesting seeing how fast we think things on the rapid release track, and then I see them a few weeks later being announced for the scheduled release track, and I think, how can I take 2 more weeks for that?
Another question kind of similar to that. Someone wanted to know, which Google Apps services have you enabled for the entire campus?
All the core services are enabled, but we're not actively using groups. Non-core services, we're reviewing them a few at a time. We just today turned on Google Plus for the whole campus and sent out some announcements about that. We're very excited. There are services that we're still trying to review to see how they fit into our structure. Google Wallet is one of those. We have some concerns about how that'll interact with our environment and our other payment gateways and things like that, PCI compliance. So we're exploring that and to make informed decisions.
Someone wanted to know a little bit more about feedback from end users in the community. So what have students been saying? What have faculty and staff been saying?
Well, I started with what Jerry mentioned when we got the best of Mac when we moved over to Google Apps, and quickly we were getting all kinds of good feedback. But I think by now it's just part of the community. They just use it. We don't hear much about it. We hear more feedback because they still remember the way it used to be. But students now, there's no learning curve. Come in knowing Google from their personal life, and they jump onto using Google Docs and sharing amongst their peers. So not hearing anything bad, but people are just using it.
My experience, as I think is pretty common, is that the status of the IT group is always suspect, and always issues that the community has with the IT organization, and that's no big deal. I mean, we're going to protect data and systems, and there's various reasons why we're perceived as sometimes problematic, and that's fine. That all makes sense. But I have to say, in our environment, it's the other way around. We're well integrated with the community, and there's a lot of respect, and we're considered to be participants in developing the school. And that's a great way to work. I'm glad to have experienced it, and I think a lot of that has to do with bring Google in and the positive effects that had on our mindset and our ability. I have to say that at that point, just to years ago to bring Google in, although I thought there was no other choice, I thought it was the absolute right choice. I still felt a little bit apprehensive about it. We didn't want to be on the cutting edge, especially after our prior experience with email systems. We wanted to be reliable. We wanted to work with absolute certainty. We weren't in the mood to be experimenting. So we thought that this really, given the future, this was the new generation of collaboration suites, and we needed to go that way. And it worked very well. That risk was rewarded, and I think, as I said, we are participants in developing the community, and that's a great way to do IT, I think.
Another question about your roadmap. So what's on your roadmap? How do you plan to take the Google platform to the next level?
Sure. Adam alluded to the fact that we are reviewing the Google Suite. It seems like that, especially the new infrastructure, which arrived this fall, all of a sudden there were a ton of new apps, non-core apps in the Google Suite. So we've been reviewing them as quickly as possible and releasing them to the campus as best we can. Our general strategy has been to, as much as possible, mirror what people get in their public Gmail, like some policy or guidelines from the college. So we're doing our best with a bias towards releasing as many tools into the hands of our users as possible. Adam, and also we turned on Google Plus today. We're hoping that people use Hangouts for video conferencing. It's a very powerful tool, and we just wanted to get that as quickly as possible in their hands.
In terms of plans generally, I'm acquainted with doing strategic plans for IT or tactical plans or whatever you want to call them. But I think the element of our planning is for our staff and our campus to stay adaptable, to stay flexible, and be ready. Our president was talking recently about his role in higher education. Our president is Brian Rosenberg. He blogs in the Huffington Post, and he's pretty known in these circles. And Brian was saying, everything is going to change for us by some piece of software that's being developed right now that we don't know about. So we want to be prepared to be able to stay calm, look at these things carefully, be ready to incorporate changes as they come. Of course, we have rollout schedules for ERP upgrades and management systems and so forth, but our key element now is to be flexible and adaptable and be able to manage as easily.
Anyone have any other questions? Feel free to submit in the chat window. Another one came in. When reflecting on your rollout, what do you think has made Google Apps successful at Macalester? What do you wish you have done differently?
I think mentioning about the committee being more than ready for a change contributed a lot to a successful rollout. And in and also in the selection process, we were very careful and we did involve everyone, so everybody had some ownership. Those two things were really, really key, developing that interest and desire and including everybody. More than anything, that's what contributed to the success. I think, as I mentioned, we had a 6-month rollout carefully planned step by step, and we ended up rushing through it in 3 weeks. I don't know if finally that was a good thing or a bad thing. In some ways, it was like getting a surgery. We just wanted to get it over with, and it worked out that way, even though we hadn't planned it. I wouldn't advise that. I think the 6-month rollout plan would have been the way to go, but everybody was on board. We had a problem, we had a crisis, and we had to be on board, not only IT, but the entire community on board to solve this, and that also contributed to it. And then finally, there's the project itself. There were a few people that had some difficulty and didn't want to change, of course, but the product was very sound, high-quality product, and we were enjoying it. I think the community was enjoying it. And certainly the students were already prepared. Google kind of technology.
Have any other questions? Feel free to submit them. Looks like that's all for the questions. So thank you, Jerry, Barron, and Adam, for taking the time to share Macallester's story. I think it was very helpful for all of us to hear. And fortunately, since we're recording this, I'm sure others will love to listen on this conversation afterward. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I think we're good.
Well, thanks again for taking the time to share. And to all who attended, thank you for taking the time to tune in today. I hope it was helpful and thoughtful for you all. I'll also be sending a follow-up survey to get your feedback on this event and ideas for future discussions. Thanks again, everyone, and have a great rest of the day.
Good luck. Thanks, Jordan.
Thanks. Bye-bye.